Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday, January 19th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And we had a little more movement today in one direction. We still had this big correction here, but that pretty much confirmed that we had this larger channel here, and you may not have been able to figure out where the low of this was until we were already there, but at least you knew we had a trend line up here, and somewhere down here there would be a trend channel, and you can see the midline fits in here pretty well based on using these closes down here. So I believe this to be correct. This is needs adjusting just a hair right there, and I believe this to be correct. So however, saying that, I didn't really use this larger trend line except for a couple of times up here. For the most part, I use these uh, more micro channels. I think they give you a better picture of what's going on. So what looked like was going to be a spike in channel up with maybe a higher low, and at this point I really thought we'd probably make another measured leg up, but when we turned down here, you had to assume there's some kind of trend line coming down through here, and you want to draw it off those first two swings, and it matches up perfect. So once we headed down, I'd look for a measured move down. I haven't measured it to see exactly how close it was, but let's just see. You can see we went much further actually. So, I mean, originally I was looking at this to be up here somewhere. Still fits up there, and maybe it is, and maybe we just got an overshoot, but that doesn't happen very often like that. Generally, it's probably here, and you can see that midline still fits, and so that's the way I'm seeing it really right there. So anyway, let's zoom in here, go through the trades. Not as many trades today, but there's still plenty of trades here. And I posted this in the forum today. One of the things I think that really hurts newer traders is the thrill of trading. Do you want to trade because it's fun, or do you want to trade because you want to make money? There's a couple, most people come in here and they want to make money, but they love the thrill of trading. And if you want to make money, you've got to be patient, and you've got to decide that, hey, I'm only going to take a couple of the best trades every day, two or three of them at the most, and get my piece of the pie, and then I'll go on. And if you have that attitude and you stick to it, you're going to have more success. If you want to trade for the fun of it, I can almost promise you're going to fail, because you're going to be looking for a trade on every swing high and every swing low. And as you can see, you have to be patient in here sometimes. Even though prices are trending down strongly, there's not, you don't get a lot of good setups until this move is down here making its final move. And you don't get anything on this move up until the bitter end of it. And you're halfway through this one before you get a setup. And so you have to keep that in mind. So I can't really stress how important it is to understand that the idea is to make money. And so if you want to make money, you got to be disciplined, and you got to wait on the right setups. And if you can't do that, and you love the thrill of trading, and you love trying to guess every swing and every move and try to get it right, my guess is you're going to fail, because it's just very difficult to do. We want to determine where prices are heading and try to get on there with them. That's our goal. And if you can do that, you're going to have a lot more success. So just keep that in mind. The idea is not to take a bunch of trades. The idea is to make money. So remind yourself of that. If you take these low probability trades that are very risky, and most of them are going to fail. It's just the way it is. So keep that in mind. But let's get to the trades here. I'm going to zoom in a little more. Okay, this first trade here, it's a little bit before 7, but if you were sitting at your computer, this would be a great trade. This is basically a double top, so it's a second entry. It's not a great signal bar for second entry, but there's a new low right there, and you get a first entry, you go higher, and you get a second entry, it fails, so it's a failure. And we've had a really strong trend here. It's the first break, and prices are just having trouble making a new high. And you don't want to go long. There, yeah, sure, there's a bigger picture second entry right here. But you see you're trying to go long right into that resistance and it fails. And if you just wait a few minutes, you get another setup and you got plenty of room to get out. And this time it shoots right on through. So that's what I'm talking about. If you want to risk that entry, because sometimes it'll push on through there and you'll get it right. But 9 times out of 10, it'll break higher like that, fell on you, stop you out, and then go right where you thought it was going to go. So make sure you got room. Wait on the better entries. This is where being patient will pay off. I have some traders, they'll send me their charts and they go long right there and it works. Excuse me, when I get to talking, my throat starts bothering me. It's probably going to be this way for a little bit till I get past this, but and it works and they think it's a great trade because they get reinforcement that it works. But then the next time it does just like this and it fails on them, stops them out, and then goes right where they thought. So you got to be careful. Just because it works, I mean, that might work 50% of the time, might work 60 or 70% of the time. But we want trades that work 80% of the time or more. Preferably 90%, but at least 80. And that's going to be a great trap. And you can see that was a trap by how fast it shot up. And that trap was enough to run it through. And then once it hit the stops, it rocketed on up. But soon it runs out of steam and it comes back and it tests this breakout a few times before it finally goes higher. And but of course we run up here and we come back. We get a triple test right here, which that's tempting, but you don't get a very good signal bar. It's just not. It's very neutral, and you see what happens. It never really triggers anyway, but you would have got stopped out if it did. But finally, it makes a failed break lower, and then it makes a higher low right here, and that's a second entry long when it breaks above this bar. I wouldn't wait till here to go long, but if you on the engulfing bar, I pretty much like that one for a second entry. And you can see right again here, trying to go long into the highs gets you stopped out before it actually ends up getting there anyway. So you just don't risk those trades into that resistance like that. If it's a runaway trend where everything's going higher straight up, maybe, yeah. But on a day like this where you've already had a break and a new high, don't risk that. Even right here where you haven't made a new high yet, don't risk that. It's not worth it. Trust me. Yeah, it'll work just enough to keep you trying it, and occasionally you'll get it right, but more times than not, you're going to get burned. And I can show you that over and over. If you're trying to get long, here it is again. Of course, there's no setup here, but if you tried to get long into these highs, it went higher and failed and turned down. It never hit the stops and ran higher. And if you tried to go long up here, you got burned. Don't do it. So anyway, there's another, you could almost look at this as a triple test, but we're still making lower lows. So you need a higher low like you had here before you go long. And you just really never get one because it finally runs higher here. I mean, this is really a little range here that I extended, doubled once we broke through, and I think this was the range. And early on, I was playing the resistance across here. And you do get a failed break here, but you don't really get a setup. I don't like these inside bars. It is way away from the EMA. If it would have broke lower there and then turned up, I'd say take that trade on the higher low, but you didn't get it. You don't really get a higher low here until second entry, and it's a second entry long too. Notice the new high, first entry, second entry. I didn't mark this one, but it's a trade you might consider. I'll at least mark it green. So nice signal bar. It's a second entry long, and it is a higher low, but really I'd want a higher low off that swing to really confirm that. And that doesn't come to way up here, and I just don't think you want to go long way up here. It's not good enough it's not a reversal pattern. The reversal doesn't come to here, and you're right into the highs, and it fails. Again, we did have 2 legs down, and now we got 2 legs up. So this is a second entry short and a lower high off of this. So I like, and way away from the EMA. So I like going short there, and then you get a lower high off this swing. If you didn't go short here, definitely go short here. And you might have gone short here and then lost your runner, so you could jump back in this one if you went short there and got out. It comes back here, but it makes a high or low. So now I'd wait on a lower high. And it looks like you're going to get one right here, but it doesn't break lower and turns back up. And by that time, don't go short above the CMA like that. And you can see it just keeps chopping. It's stuck between the resistance and the support of the EMA. And a lot of times this will break higher. But don't try to trade that, because you see what happens. It breaks higher all right, just enough to trap you in, and then it's headed lower. So anyway, once we started lower, I'd draw your trend line there, and prices do come right back to it. Technically, this is where your failed second entry. Notice there's basically a double top here, and you get a first entry, second entry. But I'd treat this all as equal highs. So this looks like the new high, and then a first entry, second entry, and that does confirm the trend line. On a first entry, those matching lows are a little bit of concern. So I don't think I'd be willing to take a first entry, but the fact that you could look at that as a failure, and you probably trap some longs right here on this big move up that fails. So if it breaks lower, it's probably going to make another leg down at a minimum, which it does, and then it comes back to the trend line again. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup here. I don't think I would go short right here because of the two sideways bars. Really, there's several bars there. We did push a little higher, but there's too much stem there, and you got those matching lows. If this had been very bearish or even broke lower, maybe. But the other thing is you're not quite back to the trend line yet either. So that's another strike against that trade. So if you went short there, you got burned. And then if you waited on the lower high, that one's very tempting. But again, now you don't have much room to this support. If you've got enough room there, you might risk that one, because it is a double test of that trend line, and that trend line's been well confirmed. And that's a really bearish bar. So you may take that trade. I didn't mark it, but you could argue for it to be green. And there's probably some others in there like that, so I'm not going to probably talk about all of them, but that one was worth talking about. But you definitely have a new high here, and then a first entry, and then a second entry, and that comes back and tests the breakout. So if we turn lower, it's probably going to trap a few longs, because you'd expect this breakout to fail, but I'd want a higher low. I'd really want to see prices get back inside and test the support before I want to try to go long with this sure trend channel working lower here. And if you catch either one of these, any of these, you get a runner on, and you can ride this all the way down. I don't see any reason. There is a short-term trend channel coming down through here, but I don't see any reason to try to take these other trades. If once you get this trend line, you can see there's quite a few setups, but they're all first entries or congestion and just not very good setups. And even though it continues to go lower, I don't see any reason to risk it until finally you come down here and you get a little congested area with the double bottom, and you break higher and you get a first entry, and then when it breaks lower there, it's a second entry. The key here is make sure you got enough room to get out at the lows. And I don't know if you could have worked that trade out. I believe if you let it break lower and try to get a little better entry, you got enough room there. So you can see there's exactly enough room to scalp out there. It doesn't matter, it goes further and you end up with plenty of room, but you just don't know that it's going, just like you don't got to be careful on the resistance, you got to be careful on the support. And there's just enough ticks there to get out of that if you let it break lower and drop a limit order in there and get a little better entry. So keep that in mind. That's the reason I marked that green. We did just come off the lows, so there's a good chance we're going back to the highs, but this has been very bearish, and it's been kind of just weekly dropping lower, so you would expect it might probably drop lower again there. And somebody asked me about a trade similar to this yesterday. Yeah, that's congestion, but you're trading this like a failed breakout. And the key is, do you have room to get out before the lows? If you do, you can, if you can finagle your trade where you got room to get out, then take it, especially with a signal bar that strong. But it does bounce here and you get a break. and then we just start kind of going sideways. And it's too early really to look for long, so I don't see anything here that would tempt me to go long. But you do you make that high, you test it once, you test it twice, and you do really make a double top. So that's considered a lower high, and that's a big bearish bar. So I like going short there. There's a lower high here but the signal bar is no good. There's a failure here, but this trade is almost an exact repeat of this one. And I didn't mark this one, but with it being a repeat pattern, if you saw that, you could take this trade. I'll make it green because you're expecting prices to make a new low here. And of course, it actually makes a new swing high there as well. So now you got a first entry, second entry. Now you got a failure right at the key entry point and at the EMA with a decent bar. That's the better place to go short. And you can tell it trapped the longs trying to pick a bottom because look how it rockets down real quick. Comes back and makes a lower high, but you hadn't really had a close outside either yet. But you almost figure you probably won't get two legs here, so I'd wait. I wouldn't take this trade. You can't justify as a failed second entry or anything, so it would have worked, but better off to wait. And of course, now you got a break and a new low. You've got a break and a new low on the green, and you might expect prices to rocket out of here. And it looks like we really are. And this is a higher low, but it's not a higher low you really want to take. You want a reversal pattern, and that would mean you'd have to come back one more time and bounce off the EMA, and it doesn't do that. So yeah, it works, but I think it's real risky because there's some resistance across there. We turned down once, pretty close there. And you see it turns down instantly, but it would have been enough to get you that. This is one of those times where it worked, but the next time it may not work. You need a better reversal. You need a true reversal pattern, which that is not. Turns down, and then we just kind of start working sideways. You can't go long here, and I don't see any shorts I like. That's tempting, but we made a higher high. Notice how we're making higher highs each time and higher lows pretty much. I'd wait on a lower high, and you never get one there. I mean, yeah, there's a lower low right there, but you don't want to trade that. That's a very bullish bar. It doesn't, because I make that comment sometimes, and then people say, you said wasn't a lower high, but there was. Well, when I say that, I mean there's not a tradable lower high there. Yeah, that makes a lower high, but that's not tradable. So make sure you understand that. And of course, we start chopping higher, but I don't see any sure setups here at all. The only one you really get off the key entry points right here, and it's a horrible signal bar. Then you get a break, a first entry, turn back down, and you get a second entry long right there. And you also get you make a double test or triple test right there. That's the place to go long. You may not could get in that because it gaps over and hits those stops. Basically, they're stop running there. They got them trapped to the downside, and they run their stops here. So if you could get in that, by all means take it. Then of course it drops down, and then we start just kind of going sideways here. We do turn down off the main trend line and get it again here. This is what really kind of confirms it because that's your first two swings there. But there's no setup there that I see that I would take. You do make a lower high here, but look that's definitely congestion. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Before it's over, there's a dozen of them, but it starts off with 5 bars side by side, and you got your doji or nobody right there, and these are actually all inside this bar. So don't take that because this is what will happen until you get stuck in that. But finally, you break out. And it fails. That's why, again, you don't go long, but you got to be careful going short out of here. When it comes back and gives you a failed second entry long, we've seen this pattern multiple times on corrections, and there it is again. So I marked it green. You may want to take that. And then we run down here and we start going sideways. And this is just a first entry short, but it does confirm that trend line, and it is a triple test. And so that's another repeat pattern, but there's plenty of room to get out. You make a lower high here, not a very good setup. congested, you got to go short into the resistance. And notice how it fails momentarily. It does end up going lower, but sometimes it'll stop you out before it goes lower, and sometimes it won't even go lower. So you can't go short there, just as we've already talked about. And of course, it drops down here, and these are not very. We're continuing to chop lower, but there's just nothing really here. There is a second entry short right here, but very neutral bar. That's congestion, real close to the lows. Just nothing I see there. There is a failure here, but that's the first break of this trend line. So I wouldn't go long yet, even though there's a failure. And it's not an ideal. I'd like to see this bounce off the EMA. But if you're patient, you get another first entry and then second entry long right here when it breaks higher. And that does confirm that trend line. And that's probably going to, as bearish as that is, it's probably going to trap some shorts. And it actually this never really triggers to the downside, but you can see you go higher once and then you turn back down and then you go higher again. So when it breaks back higher there, it's a second entry long. It's a little different second entry, and that's why I marked it green. It actually does the same thing here again, but you don't get a very good signal bar here. These are all inside bars, so I don't like them. And of course it drops here. You do get a lower high. Again, it looks a little bit sideways. It's right into the EMA. I'd wait on a failure here and you don't get it. Prices just drop and they're gone. The failure doesn't come till here, and it's way too far away from the EMA. You've already got two measured legs down, more than two measured legs. So, and it's after 2:30. So anyway, that's what I saw today. Mostly down. Not quite as crazy as some we've had. We went through some moments here where it just starts going sideways. That's where you just be patient. Switch over when you get into these things. Switch to range rules. Trade it like a range if you have to. And just be patient and wait on it to start trending and give you another setup. And sometimes it'll trend, and what'll happen is people will see it trending like this and they miss it and they miss it and they question it, and then all of a sudden they'll get a setup and they'll say, okay, I'm taking it, and it reverses and stops them out and then turns and goes right where they think it will. So don't let a big move make you think you did the wrong thing, because all you'll do is reinforce bad habits. Sometimes you'll get a huge move like this and you don't get a chance to get in it because you just don't get a good setup, and that's just part of trading, but there's still no trade there. So don't force one when it comes back and gives you a good second entry here, take it, but don't force any of this other stuff, because it'll work sometimes and it'll keep you trying to do it, and you'll just end up being in the long run, it's a losing strategy. So don't do it. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. It's a short week. We'll wrap up our week tomorrow since it's Thursday. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.